Finally, the Desmond Ridder era is here. Guys, it's crossover Thursday, and I'll be joined by Locked On Saints host Ross Jackson to preview this upcoming hate week matchup between the Atlanta Falcons, New Orleans Saints, here on Locked On Falcons.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another crossover Thursday episode here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints, getting you ready for this weekend's big Saints and Falcons matchup here as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much, as always, making Locked On Falcons or Locked On Saints, whichever one of us you're tuned into here to listen to or watch, your first listen or watch of the day. With this show, you've got Aaron Freeman, over this side. There we go. This side. Over at Locked On Falcons, at Falc Fans on Twitter. Myself, Ross Jackson, host of Locked On Saints, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter. We're going to be breaking it all down for you on this crossover Thursday, which of course is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. And as every crossover Thursday is, today's episode presented by Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy, and the way that we know that you're going to love it. It's super simple. All you have to do is pick 2 to 5 players, choose whether or not they're going to come in at more or less than their Prize Picks projections. Take about 60 seconds to get it all written in. In fact, Aaron just put his in since I started doing the intro. It's that easy, that quick, that simple. You get those right, you can win up to 10 times your entry back, and first-time listeners, first-time users can get a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 by simply using the promo code LOCKED ON. Once again, that's promo code LOCKED ON over at prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app today. We're going through predictions, including some of our thoughts on those Prize Picks projections, more or less on those. We're also going to take a look at some key matchups, but as always, we start off with the biggest story. And Aaron, the New Orleans Saints season is going as such. The biggest story for the Atlanta Falcons might also be the biggest story for the New Orleans Saints. That's how things are going here in the city of New Orleans. What is the biggest story for the Atlanta Falcons going into this one?
Well, Ross, it's all about Desmond Ridder, the Falcons' third-round rookie draft pick. There's excitement in the air. I know the Saints, they had, old man Drew Brees for 15 years. And then,
he wasn't old for 15 years, but yeah.
And, there was a little, I checked out Locked On Saints back at the beginning of the 2021 season. I know there was a little bit of excitement for the Jameis Winston era to sort of begin, but I think that pales in comparison to the excitement around Desmond Ridder in the city of Atlanta.
Yeah.
Marcus Mariota's done for the year. He's gone. He's at home taking care of his baby, getting prepared for his next opportunity elsewhere in the NFL, potentially.
In New Orleans.
We'll see. I think some Falcon fans just swerved off the side of the word, getting even more excited about that possibility in addition to Desmond Ridder, what he can do. But yeah, there's a lot of excitement. You get the full strength of the Falcons offensive line coming back, Elijah Wilkinson back at that left guard position. And I don't want to sit here and act like Elijah Wilkinson is the key piece to the Falcons season, but the last time he was healthy and in the lineup, the Falcons were in first place in the NFC South. So it's all gone downhill since Elijah Wilkinson stepped out of the lineup, and he's coming back this week. So it does feel like the Falcons will be able to put their best foot forward for Desmond Ridder, and to find out, how good is their third-round draft pick? Can he be potentially their franchise quarterback going forward? This is a 4-game audition. I think, this is the start of more than just a 4-game audition heading into 2023, where he may be the starter. I know our friends at BetOnline are projecting that to be the case.
Yep.
So this is really where, things are going to get started. This is a big game for him. Division rival, hated rival, on the road, tough environment. But if he comes and walks out of New Orleans with a win in his first NFL start, this man is already going to be a legend in the city of Atlanta. I've already said it. If they beat the Saints this week, and then in week 18, he hands Tom Brady his first loss in his history against the Atlanta Falcons, Desmond Ridder will automatically get a statue in front of Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So that's where we're at. The level of excitement has just been building for the last couple of weeks, and we get to see it now on Sunday.
And listen, no one can call you crazy when you say this, because obviously the New Orleans Saints of this year are not the New Orleans Saints of years past, and Tom Brady just got knocked off by Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy less than a week ago. So the idea of Desmond Ridder coming in with a dub, not too hard out of the question in those two games. But for the New Orleans Saints, the biggest story is going to be matching up with the rookie quarterback for sure. They are 16-8-1 over the course of their history going up against rookie quarterbacks making their first start. 3-0 against Atlanta Falcons rookie quarterbacks making their first starts against the New Orleans Saints. So that's good news for the New Orleans Saints. More good news, though. Erik McCoy back at practice, designated to return. I feel like it's likely he plays, considering the roster move that they made with Josh Andrews, who had been filling it at center/right guard over the course of the past couple of weeks. They waived him. They did get him back on the practice squad, or he is returning to the team, but it seems likely that Erik McCoy is going to be back in that lineup, which would be the first time in many weeks that the New Orleans Saints will have their full contingent on their offensive line, which didn't help them very much against Grady Jarrett week 1, but hopefully will do better against him week 15. There's also the potential that Pete Werner comes back. Not only, Aaron, was he still at practice today, but they also marched him out to media, which usually tells you he gonna play this weekend. So you might see number 20 back out there next to Demario Davis. And the other big question mark that we're all circling right now is Marshon Lattimore. Practiced for 2 weeks before the bye week, didn't play, got the bye week, now back at practice again today. Saw him out there along with Juwan Johnson, who also returned, and a couple of other key pieces. So could the Saints finally see? They came into this season with an expected secondary of Marshon Lattimore at one corner, Paul Adebo at the other corner, with Bradley Roby in the slot, with Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu at the safety spots. Aaron, they have not taken a single snap together yet this season. Those 5 players, they have not hit the field together at all. That could finally happen for the first time this week, which would be good for the New Orleans Saints, but with a less than 1% chance that they're going to make the playoffs. What is there really to gain out of all this outside of bragging rights against a hated rival and not being knocked off by a rookie quarterback? And wait a minute, those actually sound like pretty good reasons to go out there and perform this weekend.
Absolutely. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, the status of the Saints, because as you're right, they've been dealing with a lot of injuries this year, and if they're healthier, the Falcons will get their best punch, but that will only make the Ridder ascendancy, the Ridder-sance, as we call it here on Locked On Falcons, even better. So we're still excited here.
The Arma Dalton over here then in that case. The quarterback position conversation very different. I got to tell you, I love Desmond Ridder in the draft. By the way, I thought he was the most NFL ready one. I'm mad we didn't get to see him and Kenny Pickett go against one another directly. Oh man, I wanted the whole world to see that, like, Desmond Ridder was the round 1 quarterback and not Kenny Pickett. But either way, like, from a football perspective, I'm excited to see Desmond Ridder. I'm mad it's happening against this team the first time that he gets the start. But what a way to potentially add to this rivalry, right? If he comes out and just performs well, because I gotta say, like, Week 15 here, like, it doesn't feel like the usual Falcons/Saints hate week.
Yeah, I think, it's been kind of low key. We're both coming off buys. You're not talking about one team firmly in playoff sort of situation. Usually the last couple of years has been the Saints, not the Falcons.
What was that?
And so and so, like, yeah, it's not the usual hate week. It certainly pales in comparison to where it was week 1, where it was all building towards, getting off to that fast start this season.
Yeah, for sure. All right, coming up next, we're gonna discuss more about the quarterbacks, but we're also gonna take a look at the positions, the key matchups around them that could decide this game. 2 rookie wide receivers ready to go back at it again for the second time, who could potentially have massive games up against each of these opposing defenses. But who are gonna be the folks tasked to stop them might be the big question. We're gonna get to that as we continue on with this crossover Thursday episode. Locked On Falcons, Locked On Saints, getting you ready as part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, guys, I want to give you a word from our sponsor, Simply Safe, here at Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints. We believe home should be where you and your family feel the safest, especially during the holidays. And this season, give yourself the gift of peace and protection with the #1 rated home security system, Simply Safe. Right now, Simply Safe is offering our listeners 40% off a new security system. why I love Simply Safe. I've had Simply Safe for 8 years. I had a break-in many years ago. I first got Simply Safe because of how affordable they were with a bare bones security system that I needed at the time. But over the years, I've added to it and kept Simply Safe because I've been able to customize my system with easy to add add-ons like high def security cameras. You get high tech sensors, you get the whole shebang, and I can control it all with my phone using the Simply Safe app. And in an emergency, you have 24/7 professional monitoring agents capturing critical evidence that verify if a threat is real, so you can get higher priority police responses. Don't miss your chance to save big on my favorite security system by getting 40% off of any new system at simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl today. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
All right, everybody, continuing on with this crossover Thursday episode, Locked On Falcons, Locked On Saints. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day every day. Just like Arthur Smith over at Locked On Falcons, always making Locked On Falcons his first listen of the day, just like all of you are. For your second listen, make sure you also go ahead and check out Locked On Sports Today, hosted by Peter Bukowski, getting you all of the local insight from the Locked On local experts, bringing you beyond the scoreboard, behind the scenes, like no one else can except for a Locked On. You can find that on this app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Matchups that can decide this game. Aaron Freeman, where does it all start for you?
Well, we're looking back at that week 1 matchup and kind of where it all went wrong for the Falcons. That was the fourth quarter of that game where, Jameis Winston was able to do horrible things to the Falcons defense in that fourth quarter that led to that fourth quarter collapse for the Falcons. And of course, the win for the Saints. And what was interesting about that matchup is the Falcons came out, played a lot of man coverage in that game. That was one of the most man-heavy coverage games that the Falcons have played all year long. And it worked pretty effectively for the first 3 quarters, right? Winston only completed 2 of 7 passes against man coverage based off my charting, was sacked twice, right? The Saints had like an 11% success rate against the Falcons man coverage through those first 3 quarters. And then it all went awry, and a lot of that was owed to Michael Thomas getting the better of AJ Terrell. That was owed to Jarvis Landry making a couple plays, but the Falcons didn't have their nickel cornerback in that week 1 game. They had D. Alford, they had Mike Ford kind of getting their first real NFL action going up against Jarvis Landry. They won't have that problem this week with Isaiah Oliver now healthy and playing well, so he should be able to keep Jarvis Landry in check, playing that slot nickel position for the Falcons this week. But really the key matchup is going to be AJ Terrell versus Chris Olave. AJ Terrell really struggled against Michael Thomas. One of the things we've talked about a lot on Locked On Falcons over the years is when you see AJ Terrell man up some of these guys, the bigger receivers tend to give him a little bit more problems. We've seen Michael Thomas have a lot of success against him. We've seen Mike Evans have a lot of success against him. But the quicker guys, the speedier guys, the Stephon Diggs, the Adam Thielens, etc., AJ Terrell seems to have little to no issue with those guys. And I think we'll see the Falcons continue to deploy their man coverage against the Saints defense without Michael Thomas in the lineup. Now that Oliver's back and you're going to get AJ Terrell against Olave, that should be a more favorable matchup for AJ Terrell. And if he can contain Olave, if Oliver can attain Jarvis Landry, I don't really know what else the Saints can throw at them in their passing game. The running game has not been effective. I say that, and of course, Alvin Kamara, breaks his slump and has his get right game against the Falcons. But it is one of those things that I think is setting up for the Falcons to be able to stymie the Saints offense if AJ Terrell can sort of take Chris Olave out of this game.
I think this ends up being a huge proving ground for Chris Olave this game, because he came into this season as the rookie. If I remember correctly, he had the highest success rate against man coverage coming out of Ohio State. Now, can he do it against a very physical, strong corner in AJ Terrell, and can he do it at the NFL level against this guy who's going to be completely focused in on him? I think we've seen him perform pretty well against man coverage so far this year, but I think this ends up being kind of one of those big prove-it moments, because you're going to watch these two guys go at it now for years, effectively, within this division. So I love that matchup. One of the ones that I'm going to be watching, and I talked about this on Locked On Saints not too long ago, but the interior offensive line from the New Orleans Saints, which I assume will include Erik McCoy back. All the signs seem to be pointing to him returning, but, look, he's just designated to return. We'll see if he gets back out on the field. That might not be the case. So the interior offensive line for the New Orleans Saints up against Grady Jarrett. Grady Jarrett had a 15% 15 point something percent win percentage against the offensive line last time when they met week 1. 5 total pressures, 3 hurries. He was in on 2 sacks, credited with 1.5. Made a bunch of plays in the run game as well. He was an absolute wrecking machine for like 3 quarters. And then just like most of what happened with the Atlanta Falcons defense, things kind of fell apart for them in the 4th quarter. But you can't rely on that being the case for a second time, right? So you have to be able to neutralize Grady Jarrett from the very beginning, and that is not going to be easy. This guy is aging like a fine wine. Like, he is playing so incredibly well, and he just seems like he just gets better and better every year. And it's both infuriating / like enriching to watch it all happen. Especially when you cover a team like the New Orleans Saints, who have no defensive tackles on contract in 2023. Not a one, not a single, now nutta when it comes to the defensive tackle. So Grady Jarrett is somebody that was a bit of a wrecking ball against them last time. Can they neutralize him and in turn potentially get the run game going? Because that would go a long way in getting that run game going for the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And normally, when I look at some of these other matchups in this game, I would normally focus on the trenches as well. But in the past, it's always like, okay, is Kaleb McGary going to have a good game against Cam Jordan? But I'm not as worried about that this year because Kaleb McGary is playing pretty good. We've had week after week of worrying about, okay, is this going to be the game where Kaleb McGary comes back down to earth? But I'm not as worried about that. And I know Cam Jordan may be listening right now, Cam, but, I'm going to call you out and maybe I'm going to rue these words because it's going to be bulletin board material for you on Sunday. But we live on Kaleb McGary Island here on Locked On Falcons podcast. And I kind of think you're washed, Cam. I kind of think you're washed.
Yikes. So, he's going to have such a good game.
So
he's going to have such a good game.
We'll see.
Has Cam had 3 sacks? He hasn't had 3 sacks yet this season. You're going to be mad. You going to be mad.
So we'll see. All right. If Cam goes off, then you guys know who to blame. It's going to be all my fault. So I'll take that L if it happens, but I don't think I'm going to take that L. So the matchup I'm really focused on is for Drake London versus whoever. If it's Marshon Lattimore,
right?
If it's Paulson Adebo, it's Alontae Taylor, whoever that guy is. We saw Drake London come out in week 1, play really well in that game against Marshon Lattimore, and one of the things that we're hoping to see with Desmond Ridder taking over the lineup is that boost that Drake London can potentially get, because that connection and rapport between London and Mariota just slowly deteriorated over the course of the season, right? It was just non-existent these last couple of weeks, and London and Ridder were roommates during rookie mini camp. They stayed over, during the bye week work, getting that extra time in. It feels like they already have a connection and it's just ready to be unleashed. And if Kaleb McGary can take care of business against Cam Jordan, he'll have the time to find Drake London. And I think, if we're talking prize picks and, more or less projections, I'm leaning more with Drake London this week with that prize picks projection, because I just think if he could do it against a healthy Lattimore in week 1, he can do it against a nicked up Lattimore in week 15 or whoever the Saints trot out there if Lattimore's not ready to go.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to spoil anything by doing this. The prize picks projection for Drake London is 42.5 yards. And I think I'm going more than that too. I think that if the Falcons do this right and they allow Desmond Ridder to be as aggressive with the deep ball as Marcus Mariota was, but Ridder actually hits on those, Drake London might get 43 yards on one pass. Like you know what I mean? Like that's not absent from the Atlanta Falcons offense at all. You know what I mean? So and I think Ridder's a better downfield passer. I know he wasn't the excellent downfield passer, the greatest downfield passer in college, but I think he's a better downfield passer than Mariota has proven to be throughout his career. So there's a chance that they take that shot and try to get 43 all in one fell swoop. I love that one. My last one here is I've been trying to figure out how to say this. I'm going to say it this way. Taysom Hill versus the state of Georgia. Because Taysom just always seems to have these great games against the Atlanta Falcons. He had a one-man drive in the first quarter on the second drive of the game, second offensive drive of the game, for the New Orleans Saints. that's really kind of the reason they were even in the conversation in the fourth quarter by the time that they got there, because he had the big breakaway run and then he had the touchdown run at the end of that one and everything. But I'm convinced, man, that like Taysom has done such a great job against the Atlanta Falcons that if he went up to bat against the Atlanta Braves, he hit a home run. If he was kicking against the Atlanta Football Club, then he would end up, scoring a goal there. He could have run for Senate in Georgia. And we know how complicated that was. Like, there's nothing that Taysom can't do as far as I'm concerned when it comes to going up against the Atlanta Falcons or really just the state of Georgia. But I do think that they need Taysom in this game. Like, if you want to get the run game going, if you can't get it all going with Alvin Kamara, Taysom Hill has to be a big part of that game plan as well. So that's a big one for me is can the Atlanta Falcons stop something that they haven't proven they've been able to stop before, right? And that's up to Pete Carmichael, Dennis Allen, and the New Orleans Saints to like push that agenda as much as they can.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. They didn't really stop Taysom Hill at all. The Saints stopped Taysom Hill.
Yeah, right. They stopped giving him the ball.
They stopped giving him the ball. Like, he was basically doing whatever he wanted to do. So, this is Cam Jordan, Taysom Hill. This may be my nightmare. If I've made that bet, I might have to lie in it. But I'm hoping that maybe this is finally the time where Taysom Hill, does not wreck the state of Georgia, as you say, Ross.
Yeah, we'll see. But if it's anybody's fault, it might be on the Saints. It might be on them and their play calling. We'll get the predictions here next. Will Desmond Ridder outperform what we've seen on average so far from Marcus Mariota? Aaron and I will give our projections on that, as well as a look at the honestly surprising line that BetOnline has in favor of the New Orleans Saints. We'll get to that as we continue on with today's Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints podcast.
Well, speaking of BetOnline, it is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. And since I know and Ross knows that you guys love sports podcasts, you can find those as well at betonline.net. And if you're just looking for this week's line, the Falcons are surprisingly 4-point underdogs. Get it? Rookie quarterback on the road, bye week. Falcons lost the week 1 game, but I'm feeling some type of way about that line. And the Falcons, started off this season really strong against the spread, and I think they'll finish really strong against the spread with Desmond Ridder. But whether you're looking for that line or just finding the latest odds and trends for every professional or amateur league out there, you can find it all at betonline.net. Whether it's football, college bowl season, NBA, World Cup, esports, they have it all. So head to the website today at betonline.net. Use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
As you heard earlier, Aaron and I are all about being safe. So let me ask you this. You're hanging out with your friends, putting back a few brews, all that good stuff, when maybe you have a few too many. And as the evening comes to an end, people are starting to head out, all that, and you think about calling for a ride, but nah, you live nearby. What's the worst that could happen? No big deal. What are the odds that you're going to get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job. I mean, that's not terrible. You total your car, you kill somebody. Like, it's that serious. It's that serious when it comes to drinking and driving. Everyone knows the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and oftentimes deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel under the influence. And that's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads. It's to help save lives. So we're here, sharing a positive message in the hopes that you hear us when we say that if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe, plan ahead to get a ride, or of course use a ride sharing app. It's nice and easy. There's no reason not to anymore, because it only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober, get pulled over. All right, Aaron, wrapping up this Locked On Falcons, Locked On Saints crossover. You mentioned it. BetOnline has the New Orleans Saints favored in this game, -4. So favored by 4 points. Now, that home field, like you mentioned, rookie quarterback. Like, there's reasons for this. The over-under is also at 43.5. But how do you see this game playing out? Game flow, score, however it is that you want to discuss it.
Yeah, I could see the Falcons getting off to a slow start as they sort of let Desmond Ridder get his feet wet. But I don't see the Saints offense going back to some of the things that we talked about with the matchups in the secondary with the Saints receivers and Andy Dalton. I don't see them pulling away against this Falcons team. And so even if that slow start happens, I feel like the Falcons will be able to get back into the game, because I do think Ridder is going to bring a little bit more potency to this passing attack and unlock potentially a deep ball or two, rather than the Falcons having to rely entirely on their running game to move the football. And, I feel like, special teams could be a factor in this game as well. I know the Falcons special team's been pretty good. Yep. I know the Saints special team has not been as great. So there may be a big play or there. We know Cordero Patterson loves to show out against the Saints. He's done that multiple
rushing yards
times.
Last time.
Yeah, he had that big game in big catch in 2021. I know he took a kick return to the house when he was with the Bears, I believe, against the Saints. So, I feel like there's an opportunity there for Cordero Patterson to continue that streak and have success, maybe in special teams, and that be the thing that could be the deciding factor. So like I did week one, it didn't work out, but I'm going to go with the Falcons. I got them covering. I got them winning. I think it's going to be something around, Falcons 23, Saints 20.
Nice. Yeah, that would put it right around kind of where that over-under is, too. Let me just say this real quick, too. Cordero Patterson, greatest kick returner of all time. Argue with the wall if you disagree. I think people believe that the Saints don't have anything left to play for. And people say, oh, the season's over for the Saints because there's no playoff chance. But there's still 4 games left. These guys have dedicated their entire lives to going out there. For some folks, who knows, these last 4 games could be the last 4 games of their career for all we know. Like, we never know how things are going to go. So I do think that the Saints have a reason to play when they go out there. I think some of these guys are looking to put up good tape so that they make sure that they either get an opportunity with the team or another team over the offseason, but also just going up against the Atlanta Falcons. Like, this is a rivalry, and it doesn't matter what situation these two teams are in. They always play each other hard. Like, one could be 11-3 going into this week with the other one 0-14, and it wouldn't matter. They would still come out and try to punch each other in the jaw. And so I think that that's exactly what you're going to see from this New Orleans Saints team, and I think the Atlanta Falcons team as well. But despite the idea that the Saints don't have anything to play for, I think they do. And some of it is pride, some of it is whatever, what have you. And this is a team that can come out and win this game. And I do think it's going to be close. I actually, funny enough, I have it written down. You can't see it. But I've got 23-20 as well. So I've got the Falcons covering, but I've got the Saints winning this game. The Saints don't win 2 games in a row. It's just not going to happen so far this season. They got the Cleveland Browns on Christmas Eve coming up in Cleveland. They got the Philadelphia Eagles after that. They got the Carolina Panthers close out. So I think that the Saints could potentially add 2 wins by the end of this season, but that's like the best that they're going to do, I think, at 6-11. But I think it starts with this week. So I do think that the Saints can win this game. I agree with you, though, that this does not, they won't run away with this game. I don't think that they can. Something to just keep note of, Will Lutz missed Wednesday's practice. He was DNP. Not with an injury, it's with illness. There have been a few players that have missed practice with illness that would go on to not miss any games for the New Orleans Saints. But just something to keep an eye out on, because like that 1, 2, 3 days without kicking ahead of the Sunday game could have an impact. So definitely something to watch there. But I'm going to take the Saints on the reverse side of 20-23. Let's get to some quick projections here from Prize Picks before we recap the day. We could just kind of rapid fire through these. Desmond Ridder, 172.5 passing yards, more or less. You told me before we started recording, that's like right around Mariota's average, right?
Yes, and for that reason, I'm going more, just because I have to believe it's part of the brand now. Desmond Ridder is an upgrade over Marcus Mariota. So, yeah, more.
Could you imagine calling for Desmond Ridder all season and then saying, no, he'll be worse than Marcus Mariota? I'll echo that. I'm going more as well. Andy Dalton, 213.5, more or less in terms of passing yards there.
He'll probably get more. I feel like he's going to be able to put together some long drives. I think the Falcons will just sort of hope that they can get some stops in the red zone. But I think Dalton's going to dink and dunk his way all through this Falcons defense.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like 215 yards. Like, he just barely gets over it by 1.5 yards. And I think that, like, some of that is Chris Olave. Some of that is getting Juwan Johnson back, who the Saints hope to get back out on the field. But don't rule out a deep shot or two to Rashid Shaheed as well. They love getting that guy open and behind defenses. His speed is ridiculous, and so look for them to try to take advantage of that. Cordero Patterson had 120 rushing yards against the Saints opening up week 1. 50.5 is the projection, more or less, there.
I feel like I'll go less just on the rushing yards. I feel like maybe he gets a little bit more involved in the receiving game. And because they split carries with him and Tyler Algier, I don't know if he's going to have the dominant game like he did before, but it'll be probably around that number. So I'll go less, but it could be more.
I think it's gonna be more. I just think that with a rookie quarterback coming in, like there's not really a lot of ways that the Falcons have to sort of do the usual handicapping that a team would do over on the offensive side, right? Kyle Pitts is injured. He's out. Like Drake London is still somebody that he's going to be able to rely on. But I do think the run game becomes really important. And I think that the mix and match of Cordero Patterson and Tyler Algier could still be there, but I think that it's still like 60 something rushing yards for Cordero Patterson. So I don't know that it's like by much. Hopefully it doesn't cross the century mark against the century mark against the Saints. I was like, did I just project him to rush for 1,000 yards in a game? But it does put him in position to still top that. And then finally, you've got Chris Olave here, more or less at 52.5 receiving yards. I'll get mine out of the way real quick. I already projected Andy Dalton to go more, so I kind of have to project Chris Olave to go more too because he's the top option there. But I also think he's pursuing that rookie receiving franchise record too that Michael Thomas has held.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like AJ Terrell's going to have success against him, but I don't know if keeping him under 50 is in the car. But I guess I'll go less just because,
for
again,
funsies.
Let's do it.
I love it. All right, just to recap here, biggest story for the Atlanta Falcons.
Desmond Ridder making his debut, and we've been building to this. Is he the guy?
It's finally here.
So
been calling for it all season. For the New Orleans Saints, it's the potential returns. How funny is that that's where we are? The potential returns of Erik McCoy, Pete Werner, Marshon Lattimore, getting a little bit healthier towards the end of the season. Not a lot to play for in terms of the playoffs here, but hey, division rival, a good opportunity here to pick up a win and play spoiler against a division rival. Key matchups that you're watching.
It's all about the outside guys, AJ Terrell versus Chris Olave. See if he can keep him locked down better than he did against Michael Thomas in week 1. And then Drake London going up against whoever in that Saints secondary is healthy enough to deal with him. He had a great week 1. He's had a quiet last couple of weeks. I expect him to have a big explosion with Desmond Ridder stepping into the starting lineup. So those are the key matchups for me.
Big one there, absolutely. I'm looking at Grady Jarrett in the middle against the New Orleans Saints. Offensive interior, we'll see who those players are, particularly at center. That's going to be a big one to watch because if he gets disruptive in the middle, Andy Dalton's not going to have time to do anything. The run game's not going to get working. Like he could be a one-man wrecking crew against the New Orleans Saints. And just like it could be Grady Jarrett beating the New Orleans Saints, I think Taysom Hill could potentially be in line to beat the Atlanta Falcons. Like I said, let him hit against the Braves. He'll hit a home run. Let him kick against the football club. He will make a goal. Let him get a feature on an Andre 3000 track and he will steal the show. Like whatever, like Taysom Hill's got it against the state of Georgia. And then finally for those predictions.
Yeah, I got the Falcons winning a close one. May get a come from behind win if they get off to a slow start, but Saints can't pull away. I think the Falcons will win it 23-20.
And I'm hoping, I'm going that the Saints just like they close the gap just enough, or that they open the gap just enough for the Atlanta Falcons not to be able to close it up toward the end, but that they get really, really close. I'm going 23-20 in the other direction in favor of the New Orleans Saints. Aaron, always a pleasure. It's weird to talk about neither of these teams being necessarily in the playoff conversation, but right now the Atlanta Falcons, a little bit more alive in that conversation than the New Orleans Saints. But hey, this division has not let anybody go to sleep just yet, so we'll see how this all plays out starting on Sunday. Really, really appreciate all the time and everybody for checking us out here on Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints, for making us your first listen of the day every day. Make sure you keep it locked here because we'll be back on Friday breaking down more and more and more, getting you ready for Sunday's matchup. And as always, for your second listen today, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today to get all of the news around the world of sports in about 20-25 minutes. You can find that on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. For Aaron Freeman, or at FalcFans on Twitter, I'm Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson. Nola will holla at you here soon. Thanks for tuning in for another crossover Thursday episode here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.